Hello and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. Today we are at the Salt Lake City FanX and with our earlier Illustrators of the Future winner, Brian Lee Durfee, who is now here as an author with his first two novels of a series. The first novel, The Forgetting Moon, and the second one is The Blackest Heart. Welcome to this podcast. It's been a long time since we've actually spoken. So welcome, Brian.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So, I guess let's first I'll talk about, you were an Illustrators of the Future winner way back when.
Yes, back in the early 90s when I was a college student. I was an art student in college and I entered the Illustrators of the Future contest a couple times. I think it was the second time that I ended up winning and getting invited to Hollywood for the awards ceremony and getting published in the book and everything. So that was volume number 9,
right,
which was what, 93 or 94 or something like that. So yeah, I was just a kid back then, but I always had aspirations to write books also. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
So how did that morph? How did that transition happen? And was there any validation from the Writers of the Future that helped you to give that confidence like that helped you move over?
Oh, absolutely. Writers of the Future, when I won that Illustrators of the Future award back in the early 90s as a young person, that really kind of gave me the confidence to always be confident enough to submit my illustrations to any publisher. It didn't matter if it was a small publisher or a big publisher like Tor Books or anything. I was pretty fearless because of the confidence that winning the Illustrators of the Future gave me. And then I had a fairly successful career. As an illustrator, I did work for Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast. I painted a lot of the Magic the Gathering cards, a lot of the Iron Crown Tolkien cards. Pause. I painted a lot of the Tolkien cards that came out in the 90s that were really popular. And then I also did a lot of gallery work in the Western galleries, like in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, with a lot of my landscape art and wildlife art. And it was pretty successful.
Your landscape and wild, that stuff is just gorgeous.
Oh, well, thank you.
I see that when you post it on...
Yeah, I post it once in a while.
Yeah, so I love that stuff.
So what happened was I started to lose vision in my left eye. And I'm about 50% blind in my left eye, and it really started to affect the length of time it took me to complete paintings.
Yeah.
When before I could do them in a couple of days, then I was noticing it was taking me a week, 2 weeks. It just became economically not feasible to be a painter anymore. Plus, it was kind of painful, just the way it was affecting my eyesight painfully, physically. So that was when I decided, hey, this would be the opportunity to take a negative and make it a positive and start writing, which was also one of my dreams from the beginning.
Right.
So then I started writing, and now I've got 2 novels published by Simon & Schuster, one of the biggest publishers in the world, which is fantastic.
It's awesome. So what genre do you write in?
I write big, huge, epic fantasy novels in the vein of Brandon Sanderson, George R.R. Martin, Robert Jordan, Tad Williams, Pat Rothfuss, and I think Pat was also once he was a Writers of the Future.
Yeah.
So the legacy that Writers of the Future has left in the science fiction community is just astonishing with the amount of people.
We've had over 800 winners now with between both contests over the 35 years. We have entries from over 175 countries that come in. It's really grown well, and so. Yeah. I mean, success stories like yourself, and even being able to span over from, bridging from illustration to writing is quite a testament to yourself.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things about the contest is that, which is one of the things that that even Brandon says, it really does help the best rise to the top, and so that's what it does. So even being able to transition from one to the other, it is that creative talent that is able to bubble up there and really be recognized, which is the purpose when Mr. Hubbard created the contest 36 years ago.
Well, certainly, yeah, I agree with all of that. Even though I was an Illustrator winner, like I said early on as a youngster, that really gave me the confidence to be fearless with my artwork, and then in turn be fearless with my writing.
Right.
And just submit it and not be afraid of rejection or any of that, and just put your effort into it and go for it. So I think the contest is probably one of the best things that's happened to science fiction and fantasy since its inception, with all of the great writers that's produced.
Yeah. Now, in terms of advice for aspiring writers, because I see you do I see you do like the convention circuit, so I'm assuming that's like to build your name, get in front of faces so that people see and meet you.
Yes. Yeah, I try to do about 5 to 7 conventions a year, and I'll usually do it through Alexi's bookstore there, the Bard's Tower.
Yeah.
And he helps fly a lot of us to different places around the country. And so, I've been to Pensacola, Atlanta, Connecticut, Phoenix, Seattle. I mean, I've been a lot of places for these conventions, and it helps get your name out there. It helps you introduce to new fans in different places. And it's a fun weekend,
Yeah.
You get to play like you're a celebrity for a weekend before you lock yourself away in your house and write,
Yeah. So how did you make that connection with a big, one of the big 5 publishing houses?
Well, what I did was, since I was already sort of in the business through my artwork, I had I kind of had a name for myself, but it wasn't a big name.
Right.
People recognize Dungeons and Dragons
Sure.
and Magic the Gathering, and that I was an illustrator. So I kind of leveraged that a little bit with my query letters to agents. I said, hey, I've been in the business a little while as an artist, but now I've written this epic fantasy novel, and I actually specifically queried the agent I queried because I knew he represented Pat Rothfuss, and I knew Pat Rothfuss wrote really big epic fantasies.
Yeah.
And I said, my books are really big. They're Patrick Rothfuss-sized books. And so I am specifically targeting you because I know you can handle that. There's a lot of agents that won't take on a 300,000-word novel from a new writer. So I targeted Pat's agent because I knew that he wouldn't be afraid of promoting a really big epic fantasy that it's 900 pages long to the publishers, because he'd done it before with Pat Rothfuss. He'd done it before with Tad Williams and a few other writers. So that's how I kind of broke in.
Yeah. So now that you got these 2 novels, what's upcoming?
Well, I'm almost done writing book number 3, and
Yeah.
that will probably come out in 18 months or 2 years. And then we'll start on book number 4, and that's probably where the series will wind up, is with 4 books. After that, I have aspirations to be the next Stephen King, the next Louis L'Amour, the next Tom Clancy, the next J.K. Rowling.
Louis L'Amour, so like westerns.
I want to do I have got ideas for westerns, for epic space operas, for police procedurals like Michael Connelly or Dennis Lehane. I've got ideas for horror novels. Stephen King's my favorite writer of all time. So if I could be anybody, it would be Stephen King.
Wow. Okay, well that's great. So for people that are listening to this, they're either going to be people that have had some modicum of success and looking for the next thing to do, or for people that are just aspiring what I need to do. So addressing either of those 2 aspects, those 2 audiences, what advice would you have?
Well, if you're aspiring to become a writer and you're just starting out, just keep in mind the first handful of years you do it, the stuff you write's probably not going to be that very, it's not going to be very good, but that's okay because you're learning how to do the craft. And eventually, if you keep at it every day, you'll get good. Also, read a lot of books. If you've read a lot of books, you're going to be reading is the greatest teacher of how to be a good writer. Even better than any college course you could take. If you read a lot, people that I know that read a lot can really write very well. That would be my first thing, and just do it. Try to do it daily. If you can't do it daily, at least try to do it 2 or 3 times a week. And that's just sit down and write something, even if it's a paragraph or a page. Eventually, those paragraphs and pages add up over the years, and you'll have a novel or 2. Just right there, just write a paragraph a day for a couple of years, you'll have a novel.
Right.
For guys who are in the process of, let's say you've written a novel or 2 and you're trying to get them an agent, or you're trying to get published, or any of that kind of thing, just don't be discouraged. I wrote a big, huge, epic horror novel, my first novel, and I sent it off to every agent in New York and every publisher in New York, and I got a rejection letter from every agent and every publisher. And I think I spent about 5 years on that book. And I thought, wow, did I just waste 5 years of my life? And I was thinking, well, I've got all these ideas for epic fantasy and epic westerns and all these ideas. Do I really want to spend another 3 to 5 years on another book if it's just going to get rejected again? Well, I did, because when you write for fun. And I couldn't help myself. I just started another book.
Right.
And it ended up being this big epic fantasy, which ended up getting published. So I'm glad that I didn't let the discouragement of that first novel stop me. I kept going.
That's good. So then, in terms of how it ties in with Rise of the Future, any particular tips for people writing short fiction as to the value of writers of the future?
Well, the value of writers of the future, I think I've already stated that it's just, if you can get into the writers of the future and get invited to Hollywood to the award ceremony and get your story in a book, I mean, that's like an enormous leg up that other people just are not going to have. Even though I was an Illustrator of the Future winner, you better believe that I put that in every query letter that I sent out, because people know what that is.
Yeah.
And it's got a legitimacy behind it. So if you write short fiction, always submit. If you do any sort of drawings or illustrations, submit those too, because there's an art competition. So just submit anything like art or writing or art. I'll be honest, I've never written a short story, so I've just written big, long epics.
So you went from the illustration to writing the novels.
But I never, ever wrote a short story, so I never had a short story to submit.
Right.
But I was already in book number 9 anyway with my artwork.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Brian, for being on this podcast. And thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Writers of the Future podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Writers and Illustrators of the Future are contests created by L. Ron Hubbard to provide a means for the aspiring writer and artist to be seen and acknowledged. It is free to enter and open to new and amateur short story writers and artists of science fiction or fantasy.